Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's GoreMiser here with another episode of Inside the SPL, and I'm here with none other than Ben McKenzie, although most of you would probably know him a lot better as Benji, the solo laner here for Radiance. And Benji, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and a lot of people have gotten to see your play, but now it's time to maybe find out a little bit more about you. And so we're going to roll it back to pretty much the beginning, and I just want to know, like, where were you from, and where'd you grow up?
I'm kind of from all over the place, like obviously from the States, but I was born in Florida, but I mostly grew up in Atlanta and Illinois. So kind of bouncing between those two places, but yeah.
Well, it's awesome. You know, those two, at least like for people who are not familiar if you're watching in Europe or anything, but they're not necessarily the closest together. So what was it that kind of kept bringing you like to Atlanta or to Illinois?
Well, I've always had family like half an hour from here. In Atlanta, but then I went to high school in Illinois, so that was kind of how that
was. What was that like? I guess like kind of because did you spend a lot of time I guess in the South growing up, and then in high school all of a sudden you're in this different territory? Like what was it like kind of making a move like
basically.
That?
Yeah, I definitely like the South better. I'm more of a Southern boy at heart, so yeah, not really a big fan of Illinois. I don't really miss it at all.
Well, hey, I guess we're glad to have you back. I'm sure everybody down here, family included, are happy to have you so close as well. But when you were growing up, like you said, kind of bouncing between two areas, what kind of things were you doing? Like, were you playing video games already as a kid, or were you more into, like, sports, or what was it that you were interested in as a hobby?
Yeah, no, definitely when I was a kid, I wasn't playing video games at all. Like, I don't have one of those stories where I'm like, oh, yeah, I got my first console at, like, 6 or whatever. Like, I probably didn't even start gaming until, like, middle school age. Which, again, for the Europeans is probably like 11 or 12 or something. But yeah, I just played sports growing up. Like, I wasn't gaming at all.
What kind of sports were you playing? Like, the other pros that I've talked about, like, almost everyone seems to have played soccer as a kid, and I feel kind of left out. I was a baseball kid, so, like, I haven't had anyone who was included in that. Were you also in soccer?
I actually did play Little League Baseball, so we have something in common there. But yeah, I did also play soccer. Those were, like, my two main things, because I don't remember which one it was, but like for the soccer year, I think the important like part of the year was like the fall. And then for baseball, the important part of the year was the spring. So I'd do like one in each, but yeah.
So it just kept you going pretty much all year and making sure things were going perfectly fine for you. But, you had mentioned, like, you kind of grew up around here in Atlanta, so you're already not too far, I guess, from that. But you said you had family that's nearby. Like, tell me, like, growing up, what was your family like? What kind of things did they do that maybe helped kind of mold you into the pro player you are now?
I mean, to be fair, like, my parents have never, or at least when I was younger, they weren't really, like, too big into the whole gaming thing. It definitely took me like a hot minute to convince them that like this can be like a career and something I can do, seriously. I don't think it was really until I won Worlds where they were like, okay, yeah, like go for it. But,
and like, were they, a big influence for you? Like, was it like there's somebody that like either like, a sibling or anything that you had growing up that kind of bred maybe a competitive mindset, or somebody that you were like, you would spend time with or helped get you into games, or was it all just kind of something you found on your own?
Yeah, I don't think there was really anyone in particular. I've just always been a pretty competitive person. So, yeah, I think I've always just had that in me. So,
when you're growing up, you said baseball, soccer, that at least is taking all year round. Maybe your summers are free, but every kid needs that. When did you first start actually playing, video games? Like, what was the first game you picked up to play in middle school?
It was this game called AVA, which was a shooter. It was like this really dumb like game, but surprisingly, like Clow also played it. I don't know if you know him. And then another person who I played with at the time and like didn't even like really realize it was Skadoodle, who's like who went on to be pro in CS and stuff. So I didn't play on like a team with them, but it was a pretty small game. So like I'd see both of them in like a lot of lobbies and stuff. But at the time, like I was like 12 or 13, so I wasn't even thinking about like, oh, am I gonna like go pro in this? I was just like, oh, like I'm having fun.
Little did we know that game would end up kind of bouncing a couple of pros for us, though, right? It's incredible to know, especially when you see it. And games at that time were a little bit smaller. And like you just said, like when you first started, you weren't really thinking about becoming a pro. When did that happen for you? Like when did you start thinking, wait a minute, I could actually go pro in this. Like I could be a high level gamer.
Probably in Smite when I was like first like on the ranked grind. This was maybe like 2014, 2015. But I'd just be getting into lobbies with a bunch of other pro players, and I'd be like doing pretty well. So I was like, oh, I could just like beat these guys. Like, why not go pro? That was kind of where that started.
Well, hey, it's worked out, right? So it got you into the right area. And this is something, with a lot of the players we have, it's been a really interesting conversation because some people have moved continents when it comes down to playing Smite, right?
Yeah.
They've come over into the US. And you had mentioned that your family didn't really think too much about it until you won Worlds, but how has that conversation kind of gone with them? Like, was it very supportive being able to say, like, I'm going to go play Smite for a living, and then, like, they kind of see the tangible you on a main stage being able to do something? Is that really what kind of solidified it for them?
Yeah, that was definitely at that Worlds, I think, was kind of like the changing point where they went from being like, we don't really know about this, to being like, okay, like, this is like a legit thing.
It's like, oh yeah, he just plays games. It's a hobby, whatever. Oh wait, no, this is real. That solidifying moment can always be, I think, incredible when you do get to see it in the background.
Yeah, and that was kind of the beauty of like the old like hub energy centers, like the Worlds back then, because you'd have like a live crowd of like 3,000 or 4,000 people. So it really made everything feel like really real and alive, as opposed to just like playing in a studio or whatever.
I can imagine, the first time maybe they get to see you play that's out somewhere and you're sitting in the Cobb Energy Center, you've got people cheering for you, some people cheering against you, maybe they're not as happy about that part, but just knowing that there are fans out there, it does, change the experience going as a whole. Sure. And so, that's actually something, I normally leave this until later, but because you've been up there and you've played a ton of games in Smite, is there one that really stands out to you the most, like as being on the stage, like the world stage specifically, one of the best moments, or was there anything else that maybe stands out to you?
I don't know if I have any games in particular, but definitely Season 4, that whole Worlds run was really good. Like we were so confident as a team, and we won Worlds like more easily than anyone else ever has. So that whole thing is definitely, solidified as a pretty sick memory.
The fun part of, hey, not only did we win, which is a great memory, I think, in and of itself, but we did it a little bit better than everyone else, so you always have that to kind of hang over any other world champion. Yeah. And, you kind of mentioned it, like, you were very confident as a team. Now you guys are living a lot closer. Everything's been on, 2020's kind of stopped it from being LAN, but you're still living together kind of as a team. And I'm wondering, how is it important to you and the team to have stuff that's going on behind the scenes? What kind of stuff do you guys do to hang out and maybe bolster that team relationship?
I mean, we probably don't hang out as much as we should, but, I mean, we all get well. Or we all get along like fine, but it's not one of the teams where everyone's like the closest of friends. Like I'd say for the most part, people are just doing their own thing.
And so I guess if you're spending not as much time with them, what kind of stuff do you do when you're not playing Smite to just relax?
To relax, I don't know, lots of stuff, but like most of my other hobbies are like I've been hitting the gym a lot. That's like a main thing. Aside from Corona, but cooking is really fun as well. That's definitely like super therapeutic for me.
Well, it's one of those things I think a lot of the pros, as well as the casters, go to the gym, work out. I understand the therapy there, but you cook as well? That's actually really impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've kind of wanted to get like a job at a restaurant, but like at the beginning of this year, Corona hit. And, obviously, like, all the restaurants closed, so that kind of killed that pipe dream for a bit. But just, like, a part-time job to, like, learn stuff would be, like, super fun, I feel like.
It still exists. You just have to put it off for a little bit, right? So it'll be interesting to watch. I'm going to keep an eye on that just to see if there's a certain point where you start popping off as a chef on the side, and then you're all of a sudden the top solo laner and the top chef in the SPL, and nobody's going to be able to compete with that. And that's actually something that maybe brings me to my next question. You are one of the top players in the world, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, does that pressure ever kind of mount up where you have like these expectations maybe set for you from external sources? Does that ever kind of get to you and cause you to get a little down?
It doesn't really get to me because I've always had those super high standards for myself. So I'll be critiquing myself way before anyone else does. Like, you know, the second I make a mistake, I'm like, what was I doing there? So yeah, I've kind of always had super high standards for myself. But in terms of just like having, like, I feel like I've already kind of proven like how good I am in the past. So I don't really feel like I have like too much to prove, like, especially at this point in my career.
Yeah. Once you've already been to the top, it's kind of hard to then say, man, I'm not good, right? I'm not good enough or anything, because you've already proven you can be. And I think that's something that is really interesting, because you have done that, and you've regularly been at the top of the league throughout your career. And I want to know, before all that, like, when did you realize you were good at Smite? You had mentioned earlier that you started kind of realizing you could be high level in ranked. Was it the kind of same moment when you were like, wait a minute, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Yeah, it was pretty similar. Maybe even a bit before that. Like when I first started playing Smite, I was playing with my friend John from school, and we would, like, he was a super fun guy. Like we would play completely for fun, but like even in our games where we would just be messing around and trolling, like I would still kind of be dumpstering everyone. So maybe it was back then where I was like, maybe I'm like really good at this game. I don't know.
And all of a sudden you're in ranked, you're starting to get better than everybody, and you realize you can do it, you're a world champion towards the end of it. So all of this stuff comes together. But, you know, you've done a lot of it. We recognize you as a solo laner. How did you end up over there? You know, some players didn't necessarily want to start in their role. Were you always a solo laner, or did you kind of get forced over into that side of the map?
No, I literally, like when I played ranked, I literally played like every role. But I just thought that solo lane would be the role that I was best at. And also just in ranked in general, it was the role where I had to rely on other people the least. So I was kind of just like, leave me alone. Like I'll win all my lanes and like I'll carry. Like, but yeah, I just thought it would be the role that I would be best at in competitive. That was really why I stuck with it.
That's a great mentality as well. Like, you know what? I don't need any of you guys. I'll just I'll do me. I'll win, and then we'll see if I can carry the rest of you afterward. It's the exact kind of teammate I think that you want in ranked. Honestly, somebody that will carry you. You'd love it to be able to move forward. But if you had to choose another role, like you said, you kind of played solo because you felt like you could do the most without having to worry about anybody else. If you had to play any other role, what would you choose?
I'd say that kind of depends on the year. Like last year I played a lot of support in ranked, and it was super fun because supports could honestly like carry games, which was like the first time in a while that's happened. But then in previous years I'd played like a lot of mid and jungle. I feel like jungle could be pretty fun because you're kind of the one running games, but I think mid is also really fun as well. Mages are probably the most fun characters for me. Like I've tried to play them in solo whenever I can, so.
You know, we've noticed, at least I have, that there's been a little more, or I guess a little less, mages showing up in solo lane here in Phase 2. Hopefully I can change around for you. I guess it depends on whether or not you can convince your team overall. But you know, you're mentioning that you think mages are the most fun. Do you have a favorite god in the game?
Not really. I'd say I really like stealth characters, which a lot of people might not be big fans of, but definitely like Loki, Morgan, are like always fun for me to play, and fun to play against, honestly. Like I don't get why people hate playing against Loki. Like I think it's actually really satisfying to just like predict someone perfectly. So, you know.
Oh, maybe, and this might be my personal read on it, but I know my skill gap, your skill gap, or at least the gap between us is probably pretty different. You predicting a Loki might be a little easier than me predicting a Loki, but I do think that's interesting because of the fact that, you know, he's also getting that rework relatively soon, and I guess around the time this comes out as well. So that'll be fun to watch, I guess, as it comes forward, and we'll have to see if you're able to get your hands on him and play some of those stealth gods. But, you know, talking about favorite gods, this one's the hard question I think that I ask everyone each time, and it's, you've played on a lot of teams. You've played with a lot of people, and you've had a lot of varied success depending on who you go back and isolate it with. But do you have someone that you loved playing with, that one player? Like there was something they did or something about them that just made it a little bit better than anybody else you've played with?
This is a really tough one because if you had asked me this question, like at different points in my career, I'd have really different answers. But this is oddly specific, but like in season 4, like Mike was probably my favorite teammate to have.
Now it's got to be I guess, a little weird going from someone who you really loved playing with and really helped escalate everything, I think, for your team, to now where you're a rival with them in a way, right? Like you're going against them. Does that ever kind of come up where you're like, man, that's like my friend over there, but I like if I don't beat him here, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, a little bit. I never think about it too much, but in some ways I almost kind of like playing against the people that I'm friends with, because it doesn't feel as bad to lose. Because at least it's like, okay, well, they're winning, so, you know.
It's, even if it costs you your own, you get to see your friends be successful, right? So that's always a good feeling, I think, to have. But what was it about Mike that really escalated him up there for you in Season 4?
He was just a really good teammate, and he was super willing to work with everyone about everything, and just like the amount of time that me and him put in, like other people on the team would get mad at us because we'd literally be like spamming our group chat with like ideas and strats and like picks and stuff. And other people would literally like mute like the group chat, and we'd just be like going off. Like, so that was just really nice to have like someone to like bounce off of. And like, yeah.
Be as invested as you are in Smite, right? Like just having that kind of mentality is always great to be surrounded by. And obviously it worked out for you, right? Back then. So it's been good to have that. And that actually is kind of coming into it. You've been able to do a whole ton at the top of the game. You've been a renowned solo laner for years now. So what's something that you know, and maybe is kind of second nature to you, that maybe someone who's either just now picking up the game or that person who's in gold that just can't seem to break forward? Like, what's something they just don't know about Smite, or specifically about being a pro in Smite?
I don't know. I'd say that mentality is literally everything, especially if you're stuck in like gold. Like, definitely just, you know, obviously you have to play the game more to get better, but it's mostly just about playing the game and being critical of yourself and not really thinking about anything else, just focusing on getting better. You know, as not fun as it is, you can't really just blame your teammates for everything. You have to take, you know, some personal accountability. That's the main thing I would say.
That's the one sentiment that's going to have to ring true for everyone. You have to blame yourself sometimes, guys. It's hard to do, but you do have to do it occasionally to make sure you escalate. And it'll show growth as a player. But, you know, right now, we're getting towards the end of this year. I just want to know, what are your goals for either this year, whether it's in life, whether it's in Smite? What do you have your eyes on trying to complete by the time, you know, December 31st rolls around?
I don't know. I don't usually set goals on like a yearly basis. In life, I wanted to hit like 1,000 pound total on squat, bench, and deadlift for this year. But then the gyms got closed for like 3 months, so that kind of went out the window. But yeah, in Smite, obviously, I just want to win Worlds again. That's kind of the main goal there. I know it's like a week after the end of the year, but close enough.
It still counts.
Yeah.
Either way. It's exciting to be able to see it, but I mean, it's incredible, I think, to see what you have done, and I'm glad that you sat down with me to just talk about a lot of the things that make you you. And of course, people can find you when they want to watch you in the SPL by looking up at the schedule at SMITEProLeague.com, but where else could people find you, Benji, if they want to be able to like follow you around the internet, watch you stream, anything like that?
I don't really stream, and I have a Twitter I never really use, but if you want to follow me, go for it.
Bolster the numbers, either way. Get them up there and make sure you do it. Because just in case, that occasional tweet will come through, and that's when you need to be there, right?
Yeah, you can't miss
either
those.
Way, you can always find more Benji, whether it's going to be through the SPL or here, if we happen to have more interviews with you. So subscribe to be able to make sure you get that stuff in your feed. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and hit us up on Twitter at SMITEPro to tell us who you would like us to talk to, you know, either the next time when we're going through this. But until then, we'll see you all in the battlegrounds.